All right, here we go. Welcome everybody to Live from My Drum Room, episode 54. This is part 2 of Remembering Charlie Watts. If you haven't watched part 1 from last week, please check it out on YouTube, and it's available as a podcast. My guests were Kenny Jones, Steve Gadd, Andy Newmark, Rick Marotta, John Ferraro, Steve Maxwell, Yard Gavrilovich. Who am I forgetting? Probably someone else. But it had a great show last week for part 1, paying tribute to Charlie, remembering Charlie. And today, for part 2, I'm really excited to have my guests, Steve Smith, Dave Mattacks, Clem Burke, Mickey Curry, Kenny Aronoff, Chad Smith, Shawn Pelton, and Don McAulay, Charlie's drum tech for the past 10 or so years, and now out on the road with Steve Jordan with the Stones. So, and we were just catching up like a bunch of drummers do, and this is going to be a hoot. So thanks for watching episode 54, Live from My Drum Room, Remembering Charlie Watts, part 2. And I'm going to admit my guests right now. Here we go. All right. Look at this. We could play Hollywood Squares with this setup too.
Hey, Johnny.
Hi, Steve.
I like
Hi,
the
everybody.
drum room. The drum room looks awesome. Yeah.
Well, thanks, Steve. It's coming along. I've got oh, there's Dave Mattacks. Okay, I was going to say we're missing someone. All right.
Yeah.
Steve, I don't know if you were on. I think I've told you this. I have another room with more drums in the other room.
Really?
So it's yeah.
I've solved that problem by just having a few houses. I have one like I'm here in upstate New York on our lake house. So I have a whole room here, but then, we have one in Oregon and then the one in New York City. So instead of just keeping them in one house, we just bought a few houses.
Well, that's actually a lot easier than putting them all in one house. I never thought of that.
Yeah. Well, you might want to bring some over to the vineyard.
I usually have one down there. I brought it back. I have my smaller Premiere set, not this one, down there. And I did a couple of gigs this summer, which was kind of fun and easy kit to transport. So
cool.
But I don't like to leave a kit all winter down there just in case something crazy happens down there. So
right.
Yeah. But anyway, thank you. I'm going to just kind of go around on my screen and welcome Shawn Pelton, the ever handsome Mickey Curry, the Kenny Aronoff. I don't know, the handsome, talented, shy Kenny Aronoff, Dave Mattacks, Steve Smith, Don McAulay, Chad Smith, Clem Burke. So thank you guys for being here. And I know,
you, John.
Thanks, John.
Yeah. Thank you guys. I think it's safe to say we all, love Charlie dearly. And I know some or most of us have a story or two that we could tell. And I'm looking forward to that. And I was going to just, if you guys don't mind, I'm going to start it off because I said this when we were off the air, that it was through Kenny recording on Bridges to Babylon back in 1997 that I sort of got my final introduction to Charlie. And Kenny, I've told you this story. You called me. I think you'd been up all night. You'd come home at whatever time in the morning, and you were so excited, as you tend to be, about having just recorded with Charlie and Jim Keltner, and you were at Ocean Way, and so I left a message for Chooch McGee that same day at Ocean Way, and thinking, I just want to introduce myself, and there was no ulterior anything. It was just a way to just say hello to Charlie if I could, and send him some of these vintage cymbals we had just uncovered that I'd given to Ringo a year before, these old A Zildjians from the 1940s that I just knew Charlie would dig, just no other reason than that. And Chooch called back like later that day or the next day, and that began this conversation. And he suggested I write a letter to Charlie, which I did. And then not long after that, Charlie called, and that sort of began the whole thing. So Kenny, thank you for enthusiastically telling me that you recorded with those guys. That kind of set it in motion. I don't think I've seen Kenny this quiet in my life.
That's because I've been up all night.
So anyway, that's one of a 10,000 stories I could tell, but that was the sort of beginning of it. And I'll just say this, kind of selfishly that I used to, like, the first time I met Charlie a few months after that, I kind of couldn't believe how nice he was, and how I almost thought he was, to quote, a British saying, he was taking the piss out of me. He was just so kind and so amazing. But it was sincere. It was very genuine. And we struck up this friendship that lasted right up till we lost him. So,
let me add to that, Johnny, because, when I walked in at midnight after I'd been working all day and night, because Don was called me up and said, "Hey, you should stop by Ocean Way because I'm working with the Stones." I went, "Are you fucking kidding me?" I went right down there, and Jim Keltner introduced me to Charlie. It was craziness. Keith Richard was working in the big room on like Monday, Wednesday, Fridays. Mick would be on Tuesday, Thursday, and Saturday or whatever. They weren't doing it together. But Charlie was in the back room in Studio 2 at Ocean Way doing his jazz record. So
Right.
Jim goes, and Jim and I had done percussion and drums together on a Joe Cocker record where we would share, do it together. Anyway, so Jim goes, "Hey, have you ever met Charlie?" I went, "No." And Charlie, super, super nice, friendly with a big grin, said, "This is Kenny Aronoff." And Charlie said, "Oh, nice to meet you." Then Jim said, "You should you should have Kenny go. He does some weird shit with percussion, playing steel buckets, and have him play on your record." So, I couldn't believe it. My head was spinning. So we go back there. I record some, and Charlie asked me if I would come back the next night. And what I was told later on is that if Charlie likes you, he's very nice. If he doesn't like you, that's it. He doesn't say fuck off, but he's just, the fact that he invites you back means he likes you. So that was that. And I just tell this story. Then we're doing this all week, and the next week I walk in, holy fuck, it's all the Stones. It's because Don had said, "Listen, you guys, you can't be the Rolling Stones if you're not all playing together." You can't have you can't have mix up. But that's just what they do. They create this this way they get creative ideas going. Anyway, I got to get to this point. This is the point, is that, so it was 4 a.m, and now we're playing with the Stones, and oh my God, being that close to Charlie, watching him play the drums, it's almost like as if somebody were to do a brush stroke across a canvas, and you go, "Oh, that's simple." And then you go, "Wait a minute, what the fuck is that?" And that's Charlie. He'd be playing and be like, hit a snare drum hard, and all of a sudden hit the kick drum hard, or just do shit that was different. Anyway, I'm playing a gourd with beads on it, like an eighth note thing, a hi-hat pattern. And either Mick or Keith, I can't remember, was playing acoustic guitar. But Mick came up to me and goes, "Hey, listen, Kenny, I like what you're doing, but don't get in the way of Charlie's hi-hat thing." The point of this story is the lead singer, maybe the biggest, most famous lead singer in the biggest band in rock and roll, loves Charlie Watts's feel. He knows that Charlie's feel with Keith's guitar stuff, with his voice, is the fucking Rolling Stones. And he knows that and honors and loves Charlie's drumming so much and his feel. He was telling me, don't get in the way of that. And that's when I went, oh man, I wish all the lead singers I worked with would think about me like that.
Yeah, leave the fucking hi-hat alone.
Yeah.
And by the way, let me finish by saying, when the record came out, my part was gone.
Nice.
Oh, that's great. Well, I have to put a small cap on that. So some months later, when I met Charlie, we were talking, or it might have been a time after I met him, but we were talking, and I mentioned your name, and this big smile came on his face, and he said, "Kenny Aronoff." He said, him and Ronnie Wood have the biggest noses I've ever seen. And I said, him and Armin, Armin was still alive. So I said, him and Armin Zildjian used to get together and stand nose to nose, and Armin would say, "You can drive a Cadillac between us."
with the doors open.
With the doors open.
He would say, "You can drive a Cadillac between us with the doors open and still wouldn't touch us."
Yeah.
Very good.
Oh, that's great. Well, Mickey, I know you guys back in the 90s,
Yeah.
or early 2000s.
Yeah,
Brian,
1870s.
1870s.
It was just after the Civil War, I think it was. What was it called? Reformation. Yeah, we opened for the Stones. Yeah, we did a couple of weeks on one of those crazy traveling circus tours that they did. Everything was tents and big giant. It was like a traveling city. They had a library and a health spa and just crazy. But what I remember about Charlie, other than just, you can't watch him with your mouth closed. He was just unbelievable, just unbelievable. You look at him, watch him play, and he looks like he's going to fall off the back of the kit, like he's going to just fall. You don't think that backbeat's going to make it. You don't think the left hand is going to get there in time with it. But if you close your eyes and listen to what he's playing, it was so beautiful, untouchable, just the best, smoothest, most beautiful groove ever. But he would come and sit in our dressing room. He'd just come in, he had his beautiful suit on, and he was just such a handsome, amazingly, gentle, but he'd come in and he'd just kind of sit, and I'd make him a cup of tea, and we'd sit. And I was so afraid to talk about drums or tracks or snare drums or sounds or, what sticks do you use? I was so in awe of him and, this person, this legend just sort of sitting there in front of you. But he was so sweet and so kind and so nice. And he came back every day before we went on and sat for a half an hour with us and just kind of, we just chit chat about nothing. None of it was ever about drums. None of it was ever about, how do you do what you do? I couldn't do that. I just couldn't bring that up with him. But watching him play, I learned so much.
Yeah.
But he was beautiful, not just on the kit, but just as a guy. He was a really, really sweet man. So, and that was it. And then I saw him again, I don't know, 4 or 5 years ago. We went to see the Stones in Vienna. They were playing at a big stadium there, and I got to watch him play again. It was beautiful to watch. He was just incredible. And he was, 70 something years old then. Just going for it. I don't know how he did it. That whole band, I don't know how they did it. Mick didn't stop running the whole show.
Yeah.
Crazy.
Just crazy.
Crazy.
But,
really.
But Charlie was beautiful to watch. And, I was thinking today about what we would, what I would have to say about Charlie. And I keep going back to Satisfaction.
Oh my God.
The track, that rhythm track is so fucking hypnotic, man. It's just frightening. I don't know how he did that, but it's the best rhythm track ever recorded. The little hi-hat, the hi-hat thing is amazing, but the tambourine part, and it's so hypnotic. He's just stomping the shit out of that.
The fact that he knew to do that, the fact he knew to do not one drum fill.
No.
Would we have done that at age 20?
I forget it, man. I know.
Not one drum fill. He knew if you stop that hypnotic thing, the song wouldn't be the same.
That song just kills me. And there were only a few songs, that you listen to, and you can't put your finger on why it's this mesmerizing, but there's something about that, man. It just puts you in a completely different place. It's
like
absolutely amazing.
waiting to resolve, not resolving too fast and just waiting. And
He never stops. He never stops the stomp.
That's right.
But the dynamic is all there throughout.
Yeah, exactly.
It's just crazy.
It's the big English beat.
Man,
The
he
drum
was
break is the groove.
he was the guy.
But
When the band
and to
breaks
Kenny's-
down, the drum break is the groove.
That's right.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
The drum
Yeah.
break is the
You know?
groove.
That's
Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
He's the support. He's the
Where
support.
you could have went the other way with that, though, here's my space, instead
Yeah.
you just kept the groove and the band dropped out. It's killer.
Yeah. Or he could have gone down to just 2 and 4 on a couple of those bars somewhere, but he doesn't. He is
Right.
relentless.
Right.
Maybe for a
Because-
second. Maybe just for a second.
Yeah.
Just
Yeah.
to give you a little.
Yeah. But
Tension.
just
Tension and
scary.
release.
Just
Yeah.
fantastic, man.
I
From the,
think
from
to
the
Kenny-
first beat. Crazy.
Yeah. And to Kenny's point, he had this incredible, I think as somebody that just, from day one of playing the drums was just completely, obsessed with his playing. Like he had this incredible instinct at such a young age to play the right thing. And, and like great example of Satisfaction. You listen to Under My Thumb and there's no cymbal crashes. Where you, or at least I think there are spots where it could easily make sense to hit a cymbal. He's so restrained and so disciplined to keep it that way. And then like years later, jumping jack flash again, no drum fills.
Yeah.
It's just all the way through. And it never gets.
Yeah. And when he went for a
boring.
drum fill on those late, like, Start Me Up, or, he did those wacky sort of just eighth note,
Yeah.
Unbelievable.
What was the song? I can't remember the title with the China. He hits the China. It's I'm so
She's so cold.
She's so cold.
Yeah.
And when he
she's so cold.
hits that China once at the beginning, and it's really cool. But then he doesn't hit it for 2 minutes.
Yeah.
It's like, but it made me go like, hit it
Where is
again,
it?
please
Yeah,
hit it.
please.
Where is it?
Yeah. Why didn't you put it in the same place?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
But the point is he knew exactly what he was doing.
Yeah.
It wasn't an accident.
No.
He knew. That's the genius. He knew.
Incredibly good, man.
Those little misses on the snare were definitely intentional. Majority of them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What were you going to say, Clem?
I was just going to say about the China being right side up, the way people have it flipped over, because I play it as well. And you don't see too many people having it. Which way is it supposed to be? Because I always put it.
Yeah, I think Dave Mattacks is gonna take no and maybe it's an English thing because Charlie used to say I play it the proper way.
There you go.
Right? I play it the proper way, as does Dave Mattacks and yours truly. I don't know if you can see it, but I've got one over the floor, Tom.
See, I don't know how do you get away with it? Because every time I pull a China cymbal out of my bag, they fire me. Wrong guy.
It was really like a Chick Webb thing, wasn't it? It was the early 20s, 30s drummers, So he was just playing it the way he intended to play it, which
Fantastic,
was Chick Webb,
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. I think there's some, there's some, I know he was a fan of Shelley Mann. Shelley, I think it's Shelley at one stage before he went to two cymbals. Shelley was also, is it Shelley might be Shelley, I'm not sure. But I know there's one of the famous big band drummers from that era that Charlie was a big fan of.
Yeah.
And I've seen some footage and the guy's got the China cymbal, the proper way up, and he's got it up. He's got it up on his left, and he's playing whole choruses with it. I think that might have been Charlie may have got that, and that may have been an influence.
It could have been Mel Lewis. Mel Lewis was
Mel Lewis.
Yeah, played
or
played
Davey Tough, maybe
kind of symbol like that.
Davey Tough for sure.
Davey Tough, yeah. Mel's was always down on the right hand side, but there is. I wish I could, forgive me, I can't remember the name of the guy, but there's some footage of a drummer from that kind of back into the 50s era, and he's playing like a couple of choruses, shout choruses, and he's got it up on the left, and he's a right-handed player, and he's wailing away. Sorry about that, John.
No, Dave, come on.
Side to flip it
right-handed player.
Yeah.
But Dave, you had talked about working at Drum City, and I know you and I had talked about this at Drum City, and when all those guys would come in, Jack Spearling and all those guys, and you knew them, and I don't know if Charlie ever came in the store when you were working, but we talked about that a little bit.
Mm.
And you
I
had
think
some amazing
once he,
stuff.
yeah, he did once. I subsequently met Ringo later, but Charlie, I think, did come. I mean, I think he came into the shop quite a few times, but I don't remember meeting him. I mean, Mitch and Ginger and all those guys used to come in, and I remember those, but I don't remember Charlie coming in. No.
Yeah.
But I'm sure he did, because he knew the shop. All the English guys knew that shop. Yeah, it was like, as I've said before, it's kind of like the London equivalent of the Pro Drum Shop in LA.
Yeah, he bought his second, or no, his first Sky Blue Pearl kit there.
From there, right?
Because Ringo had gotten the black, oyster black pearl. He's like, oh, I got to get something nicer, something prettier.
and the Paiste crash, right? The Arbiter 602 crash, or is that from? That was,
right. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that's on all the records. That's
the bomb. The bomb.
That bright crash symbol you hear on all those records. Yeah. But I was going to say, Chad, you did an awesome interview with Charlie for Drum Channel some years ago.
Yeah.
And you guys, had a great rapport. And I didn't know if you maybe wanted to share a little, or other times that because the Chili Peppers, you guys toured with them too, I think, right?
We played one concert or two concerts with them at the Rose Bowl in Pasadena. And that was my first time that I had any interaction with him. And we're doing a sound check, and I'm playing, and my tech is like going like this, like,
Yeah.
What's the matter? He's looking, and I kind of lean over, and there's, in the middle of the day, and there's Charlie standing there in a 3-piece suit, looking like perfect. And he's standing there, and he's got the Charlie look on his face, and I'm like, fuck! Funk songs, and there's fucking Charlie. I'm not gonna look. Don't look over there. And I'm playing. We get done, and I walk over, and I, and I said, nice to meet you. Jay says, hey, how you doing, man? He says, thanks for playing with us. Like really, really nice. And then at the time I had a green sparkle pearl kit, which was new, and just a green sparkle wrap. And he says, is that a new kit? I can't do an English accent. And I said, no, I said, that's a new. He goes, I've got one, Mel Lewis. I got Mel Lewis. Green sparkle. And I was like,
of course you have.
Of course you do.
Of course and we chatted for a second, and that was kind of. He said, "I'm off. We're gonna play later." Yeah, I know. Years later, I see.
Chad, was the interview you did with him with Jim Keltner when you were talking about the hi-hat thing? Was that the interview you did with him?
I don't remember that, if that was on it. I asked him about where he got that from.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if it was on in the interview or not. And he told me, and I know lots of people kind of thought that Charlie kind of invented that. Of course, he made it very popular, but I think he told me that he saw Levon Helm with Dylan.
Yeah, no, Dave, that's right, because
that's true.
And it's true. Yeah, that interview, Dave, that you're talking about, it's on the Drum Channel, and it's Hal Blaine and Keltner. Right. Charlie Watts, and then the hi-hat thing comes up, and then Jim starts sort of telling a story about how he originally got it from Levon. It was the mid-70s, I think, on the record. He referenced the record that the night they drove Old Dixie down. So that period, and maybe the band was recording at Sammy Davis Jr.'s house. There was a studio or something, and all these like really fun, fun stories. And but Keltner goes on to say that he copped it from Levon, and then that he thought Charlie had told him that he saw Levon do it on the concert of Bangladesh or something like that, and
way back.
Anyway, so there was a wild, sort of history of maybe how that evolved, and that's Keltner's story on it. It was really interesting.
I think I can't remember exactly where he said, but I think he said he saw it Levon do it. But I thought he was doing that like way back. Like he wasn't doing it in the 60s.
No, he wasn't, Chad. He didn't. I don't recall him doing that until the late 70s, actually.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, well that makes more sense. But you know, obviously he's famous for leaving out that backbeat, and that's part of his whole thing. But he was so you know, Don Lombardi at DW said, you know, and of course Jim was there, and he said Charlie Watts is coming out to tour the factory. He's gonna, you know, we're working on a snare drum for him. You know, I think maybe you could have this little show on there. And he said maybe you would want to interview Charlie Watts. I'm just like, out the door. I'm like, yep, when?
Yeah.
And I live close, you know, luckily. And it was that day. And so I got to spend the day with him. We went through the factory, and again, he's dressed perfectly in a really, you know, beautiful linen suit. He just looked amazing. We went out to lunch, and the people in Oxnard, like you see the waiter just like, you know, you've all been with some people, you know, that are known, but Charlie, and he was just so nice about everything, and again, just a real gentleman, and just a class act. And we went through and toured the factory, and he's asking questions that, you know, the guys that are sanding, and you know, every person. You know, he was just so cool. And I was just like, oh, he's so humble and cool. And like, this is really amazing. He was so interested in everything. Like it was genuine, like how it's made and the plies and why do you do that and what kind of glue and stuff, you know, like he was way into it, obviously really into the instrument, and a collector, as I think all you guys know. He collects so many drums, and so we get to sit down. I get to talk to him a little bit, and we're chatting. And I said, "How did you get into drumming and music?" And it was Jerry Mulligan, and I think Charlie
Chico Hamilton. Yeah,
Chico Hamilton. Thank you.
Yeah.
And all he wanted to talk about was jazz. That was it. Like I was like, so I would try me being the Stones fan. I like jazz, but I was just kind of nodding, and he's literally reeling off like that record in '62 and blah, blah, blah. And that session on August 20th, he knew everything. I was going, yeah, really? And I was trying to go along with, but he was so nice. And it was such an honor, you know, but that's, he was, as we know, just a real jazz musician at heart. You know, and like I just got with Alex Corner, and then you know, Brian and Mick came and sat in, and next thing you know, I was in like 3 different bands, and you just kind of go with the one that took off, and we were just trying to be an R&B band, which was hip at the time, and you know, obviously we all know what happens after that, but he just lit up anything jazz oriented. He just loved it and wanted to talk about that, and you know, he was just great, and it was just such a beautiful day, and I'll never forget it. And he was just you know, an incredible drummer. And as we all know, that I think I saw a thing where Stuart Copeland said something that really resonated with me. He said that Charlie's got this ramshackle but sophisticated, nuanced groove that. He's such a band drummer and makes such good musical choices, but he's a band drummer. He's not he's you know, he's the guy for the Rolling Stones. And it's, as we all know, that chemistry, that combination of those guys just make that sound. For whatever reason, the universe put those guys together, and you know, and Charlie just played what was right for the song. You know, he's a great song drummer, as you guys spoke of earlier, not doing fills where it's easy to do, just hammering that groove and making people dance. And he was the king of it. And I did ask him, I said, what do you listen to in your monitors? And he says, well, I have the thing, you know, the thing behind me, the big thing. Yeah. And then he goes, but really, I have Keith's amp right here. And he says, and that's the way it's been from the beginning. Jesus. And like, it used to be set up on a chair, You know, but back in the what would he say, the screaming girl days, which was quite fun, but you know, somewhat frustrating musically. But he was like, he would say, "I have Keith Samp," so it's like him and Keith, and that, you know, and let's go.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
Wow.
I just to that point, I want to let you guys tell some more stories. This is so great. But I had last week, I did part one of this, and Kenny Jones was on there on the show with us. And Kenny had a great quote similar to what you just said, Chad. He said Charlie was happy to be the furniture in a band, part of the furniture in a band. He said that was, you know, what made him happy was just being part of the, you know, he didn't want it to be about him. He wanted to be part of the whole big picture, so to speak, you know, the sum of all the parts. And that's exactly right. Yeah. He always,
I mean, I you know, you would see early videos when it wasn't videos were popular, or pictures, and Charlie would always kind of, the other guys were throwing shapes, and Mick Jagger Charlie just looked kind of like, you know, an eye roll, you know, like, look at these guys, you know, I just love that. I was like, you know, he's like
miming the whole thing.
Right. Like,
it's just absolutely ridiculous.
These guys are like, doing all that shit. He's just like, I love it.
Fools. Look at you all dancing down there. You're all fools. You thought the whole thing was ridiculous. How are we doing?
Yeah, and he thought it was.
Yeah.
It was authentic.
Analog.
Well, you know, here's a point that's an interesting point to me is I read Keith Richards' book, and he talks about the fact that Charlie was the working pro, and they had to wait until they could afford to hire him. And interestingly, the Beatles tell a similar story that Ringo was the pro. And so it was like the final ingredient with both of these bands was to hire the pro to come and complete the band. So yes, he ended up being a great band drummer for the Rolling Stones. But before that, he was the working pro. He was let's say, the most accomplished musician that was in that group.
Amazing.
Yeah. And I think that's a really important way to see Charlie and actually Ringo too. You know, it's really interesting to me.
To that point, if I can jump in, he actually
the same with my band, by the way. Excuse me.
Exactly.
He actually quit. He actually quit the band after every tour, and would have to get rehired for more money, just a little more money.
That's how you make more money.
Negotiate my contract.
Duh, that's how you make more money.
Even up to his last tour, he would quit the band and have to be rehired.
Yeah,
love that.
That's classic. That's and Don, you can speak to this better than anybody here, but I think contrary to what I think a lot of people think, he really enjoyed playing. He really, you know, all the bits about touring and having to the 5 minutes of playing and 25 minutes of sitting around. But he told me that. He said it's you know, oh, it's great. He said it's what, you know, once we get here, I remember him saying to me, like at a gig, once we're here, it's great fun. You know, I can't imagine doing anything else.
Exactly. Yeah. No, he certainly get him out of the house first, you know, get him out of the house. And if you can get him out of the house, he's going to have an absolute blast. And, you know, he's hanging out with his granddaughter, showing her the world, and, you know, something that he would cherish doing that, taking her on the road and just doing cool stuff. But once he got with his mates, he wanted to just play. And he would always say he'll miss that, which is basically the backstage rehearsal, or, you know, the show, but the showbiz part of it, you know, whatever. He'd so much rather just be playing with his friends. It could be anywhere, you know, but the fact that 80,000 people are out there doing it, sure, whatever. But, you know, once he was on stage or in the lifestyle, the carrot was in front of him to do something, to go out every year. I mean, he never missed a single show up until this, you know, this tour.
Yeah.
So he really truly is like definitely the hardest working drummer I've ever known, you know. You got Mick Jagger on your back, you know, you're gonna work hard. So.
Yeah. Kenny, you think John Fogerty's tough?
Yeah.
Come on.
Yeah.
Mick Jagger.
I don't know. There might be a competition there. I gotta say something funny that I just thought of. So I don't know what session it was, but somebody said, Charlie, are you gonna change your heads? And by the way, in Bridges of Babylon, he had the same heads on the drums for 3 years.
Right.
I'm talking for studio and tour, the same ambassador heads. So somebody said that Charlie once, hey, are you gonna change? Not you're gonna change your heads. No, they said, are you gonna tune your drums up? He says, why bother? They're just gonna go out of tune. Wow. You can't argue with that, right? You can't argue.
So
That's
true.
true.
Tuning. Yeah, it's overrated
Wow.
anyway, drum tuning.
Yeah, it's
Yeah,
overrated.
tuning is
It's
overrated.
overrated.
He'll make anything sound good. He can make anything.
Yeah.
sound good.
Yeah,
That's
that's the
right.
whole point.
John can speak to this. I found that the drums are tuned like a jazz kit, basically. I mean, the
Right.
little kit that he's using, I know the day and you and I spent some time together, spent a lot of time getting it right because the drums just ring out. Was a big part of Charlie's sound, right?
Yeah.
The thing about the heads, I was able to take a couple of photos that day of the kit, and I always use that for an example with young drummers. Like, look at this drum kit. You heard of the Rolling Stones? Of course you have. He's playing to 80,000 people, and look at the drum seat, look at the pedal, all that kind of stuff. And forget all the accoutrements. Get down to like learn how to play.
Yeah.
And the seat was crazy. Don, you talk about the that Charlie sat on. I know when I sat on it, somebody said, "Put your weight on it. Be careful."
Oh man, yeah, definitely. Yeah, he just rehashed the old thing. I mean, there's a lot of mojo in that old seat. I had 3 of them ready to go for him.
Yeah.
And, you saw.
The Speed King pedal and the Rogers hi-hat stand, and of course Keith Moon's stick bag. But you do that to a young drummer, it really, I think it's inspiring for them to see things like that, to know such an accomplished musician, and this is how he plays, and this is his level of success. It's not about having 1,000 cymbals or et cetera, et cetera. And the drum heads, it's amazing when you just see them, how they're worn in. And when you see pictures of Elvin or people like that, that's what their drum heads looked like too back in the day, didn't it?
Even John Bonham. Did you ever see how the West was run? You know how when we were little kids, like the coated ambassador would get dirty, and then you keep playing it, and then the dirt in the middle, the black dirt, would be gone in the middle. That means you had to play that drum for, I don't know, a year. Well, when I saw how the West was won, John Bonham, his snare drum had that same look.
Right.
So these guys weren't hitting as hard as, well, with John, it looked like he was hitting hard because his hair was flying around. But that's like, I mean, that reminded me when I was a little kid, I had the same snare drum. I never broke heads when I was a little kid.
Yeah.
Now I break a head every song. No.
Well, he certainly would change out. He would certainly change out his head. We would
I was
change out.
going to ask you that, Don. Did he change often?
Oh yeah. I mean, every tour, or if we're going to do a session,
Right.
but not the snare drum.
Right.
The snare drum, that's marinated. That's the
Right.
jewel, But no, we didn't change. We every tour, maybe every other tour. I mean, he didn't hit super hard. He had a big stick, walked with a big stick.
Yeah, I'm surprised about that. The size,
Yeah, he's like almost 5 Bs, so to say.
Wow.
Yeah.
Things are massive.
it was a
Yeah.
hefty. Yeah, it was a hefty stick.
Yeah.
Did anyone find that he would lead into a fill? When he would do a fill, he would kind of start with like a 5-stroke roll, kind of like he would, double stroke fill, 5-stroke into like the single notes. I found that he did that quite a bit, and that made sort of a real uniqueness to his drum fills, because he starts off with a double stroke.
Yes.
Yeah.
And there was always that little drag between all those eighth notes or quarter notes.
Right.
And the other hand was always dragging between there was that little grace note thing he did.
Yeah, all those
It gave it that sort of herky-jerky feel to those fills. It's just amazing. You cannot duplicate that, man.
The urgency of working into the fill.
Yeah.
You'd come down on the snare right around that, the 11 o'clock area of the snare drum, and he would lay into it mute it almost, then drag to the center and then pick it up.
Oh,
Every single
wow.
time.
Did that.
So it sounded like it's symbolic. It
Wow.
sounded like it's
Oh,
symbolic.
wow.
Right.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
cool.
Yeah, it was pretty wild. I mean,
Yeah.
just mute the snare eventually. Just
Yeah.
put it up there in the corner, and
Right.
just drag
Did he-
in.
Slide
Did
in.
he hit a rim shot every time he played the snare, or was it only the
Sometimes.
head?
Sometimes.
Yeah.
And we did like same with the tom tom. The same, using
Yeah.
on the tom. all
Catch the rim or hit the center of the
Yeah.
head, right? Yeah.
pulling the tone.
Oh, yeah.
When
I got a good story about how he influenced me, how I changed a complete song for Mellencamp that became a hit. So like, coming off the hi-hat thing. So there's a song we recorded called the Authority Song. And the original hi-hat part was accented eighth notes, like we always do with rock, 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. And because I was so into the Stones at that time, and so I went, and we were recording, I went, fuck this, I'm gonna do that Charlie thing. And the bass player immediately turned his head around and looked at me and went, oh, fuck, I know what you're doing. He changed his part.
Right.
He was originally following my foot, boom, 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 and he changed it to boom, and then the guitar players had to change their parts. The whole fucking song changed, and it was all I did was take the hi-hat off of beat 2 and 4.
Yeah.
That's pretty heavy, man.
That is
that's
heavy.
very heavy.
That's heavy. The whole song changed, and it became a hit for
Yeah.
Mellencamp. I mean military camp.
Hey, Kenny,
Wow.
Oh,
Still working with a producer, are you?
Hey, Kenny, about that same time, it must have been like 83. I remember you had this coolest photo that was signed from Larry London. And he signed it like to Kenny, the Charlie Watts of country. I just remember that specifically.
You did?
Yeah, I don't know if you seen that photo, but I'll never forget that because Larry was such an incredible field player.
Unbelievable.
Oh my God, I forgot all about that, Shawn. Thanks for reminding me.
Yeah, I think you just started working maybe down in Nashville a little bit, and you guys had met. But man, there was this photo, and the reference was, Charlie to you, But hey, talking about Charlie's sound and stuff, there is a track, man, that was such a huge imprint on me. It's from the Black and Blue record. And this would have been like 76. And it's a ballad, Memory Motel.
Yeah.
I don't know if you guys can remember this track, but it's like that wide open Gretsch tom thing. And it's almost conversational, like the fills that he's doing, because he played beautiful ballads too, and the way you guys were talking about how the fills sometimes had that effect of falling down the stairs, but so perfectly and unique and like so hard to, recreate that magic. And man, this track, I can't put it on without just start screaming because it's just so damn bad. It's just magical. It's just a tone poem of fucking masterclass of ballad drumming and the fills and
speaking with the toms,
beautiful. Yeah.
And then sometimes you'd think it would go down and then he'd come back. It's just poetic.
Right. He goes doom, down, doom, down. Yeah. I mean,
so beautiful.
Like you said, it's that whole in time falling down the stairs. Is he going to get there in time? And there it is.
It was a call and answer. It's really call and answer with Mick.
Yeah. Oh man, it's so deep.
Beautiful.
And then on that Neighbors track on Tattoo You, which would have been, I guess, the early 80s. Because Kenny, I remember you talking about, that was that wide open neighbor, and it was like wide open, like clangy snare. And that was such for that time, everybody, was sort of, the muffled drum sound was sort of the standard. And when that came out at that time period on the radio and stuff, I remember that being a huge kind of statement that was cool, that
wide open, crazy snare drum. Yeah. Honking like it just honked like a gonk, gonk. I was going to say, Shawn, to your point, and I've made this comment too, like Charlie there was never a time that he sort of conformed to, like you say, the drum sounds of the 70s and even the 80s, where they were typically, deadened, certainly not as tom-toms. I mean, they may have muffled the bass drum and for ease of recording, but he always had this, he was very consistent with his sound, always big, pretty low pitched sounding tom-toms, just the two toms, but really big and full sounding. And And that was a huge influence on me. And like, as a drummer, like wanting to have that sound, like, Steve, you had that sound in the 80s, a big sound. But, there was a time when a lot of bands, it was like everybody had the same sort of muffled, whether it was concert toms or the dead tom sound. He never had that. It was always a really pure sounding drum.
Well, the drums were tuned like a jazz kit, like I mentioned.
Yeah, exactly, Clem.
Yeah.
Sure.
That's where obviously his influence lied.
Yeah.
Well, most of my experiences with Charlie were in the jazz world. And well, I'll just go back to the first time that I met him. It was 1981, and Journey had 3 shows that we were going to open for the Stones, one at JFK Stadium in Philadelphia, and then 2 of them in a stadium in Buffalo. And George Thorogood was the opening act, and then Journey was to do a 1-hour set. And we got through about 45 minutes of that set before Steve Perry begged Bill Graham to let us leave the stage because the Stones fans were so unkind to us.
No.
So it was a very interesting time because we had an album out called Escape, and it had Don't Stop Believin' and Open Arms, and it was actually the #1 album on Billboard, and Steve Perry unfortunately told the crowd that.
Oh dear.
Booze and
the silver-tongued devil.
And there was all kinds of stuff we getting pelted from the audience. And
Hey,
we left
as bad as the
early.
Who, though.
Yeah, we left the stage early and then waited about 2 hours for the Stones to even show up to JFK Stadium. So I remember they played Bob Marley for about 2 hours, and then the Stones showed up, and actually Charlie and Bill Wyman came to our dressing room, which was a trailer, just to say hello and meet us. And that's the first time I met him, and he was an exquisite gentleman, as we all know and have been talking about. He was very kind, and I actually watched him on stage, and he went out and tweaked his drums, kind of set everything, make sure it was right. I don't think the audience could even notice him, but he was up getting his drums right. And then the Stones did their set, which to me at that time seemed pretty ragtag. Like now the concert world is such that bands are almost all like Vegas reviews, they play along with tracks, or if they don't, they're well rehearsed. But it seemed like they'd play a tune and then they'd stand around for 4 minutes talking about, well, what do you want to do next? So it was very loose. And it took us to school, let's say, that we thought we were big time, but we were like these little tiny peons compared to the gods on Mount Olympus as far as the rock world goes. So it was kind of an interesting perspective. But then let's go. So Johnny, you jump in here, because 2006 I was touring with one of my jazz groups called Jazz Legacy, and we were playing at the Regatta Bar in Boston, jazz club in Boston, and Johnny brought Charlie down to the gig.
Yeah.
To check
so
out.
I had seen Charlie the night before at a rehearsal in Boston. He invited me to a rehearsal, and on a Monday night, and I'll back up 10 more seconds. I was on the Amtrak coming back from the Modern Drummer Festival in New York, where Steve had played with the band that weekend. And I got a call from Charlie inviting me that night to the rehearsal. So I went and I said, tomorrow night, there's a really great band playing at the Regatta Bar, Steve Smith, Jazz Legacy, and they paid tribute to all these great jazz bands and drummers, and I think you'd really enjoy it. And I had taken Charlie to the Regatta Bar in 1997, so it would have been 9 years earlier, to see Brian Blade with Joshua Redman, and he had a great time. So he remembered. I said, it's that same jazz club we went to last time, and he said, and Tim Reese, who's playing sax with the Stones, still is. Charlie said, yeah, I'd like to go. Can Tim come? And I said, sure, absolutely. We'll make it happen. So we go the next night, Tuesday night, to see Steve with Jazz Legacy. And I'll let you take it over. Dave Mattacks was also there.
Dave was there.
Dave lives in Boston and had a crew of zillion people there. And Dave, of course, was with us. And Charlie, he knew who Steve was. He knew who you were, but he said,
he only knew me as a jazz drummer.
He didn't know you as a jazz drummer.
Yeah, he didn't know anything about Journey, which is like, part of that story is that, so Jazz Legacy was a perfect band for Charlie to see me play with, because we played like Art Blakey, music associated with Art Blakey or Elvin Jones or Tony Williams or Philly Joe Jones. Like that's what the group was about. Tim Reese knew all the guys in the band, Walt Weiskopf and Andy Fusco and Mark Soskin, Baron Brown. And so, I was thrilled to have Charlie in the audience, and because I knew he would appreciate the group and the music. So we played great. It was a really good set. And then afterwards we went back. They don't really have a backstage at the Regatta Bar, but like it was a room, like a hotel room or something. So we were all hanging out in this room. And I told Charlie the story about getting booed off the stage at JFK Stadium, which he was very apologetic about that. And
I remember when you brought that up, Steve, he was really mortified. It was like, oh,
yeah,
we do that to you, kind of.
If Steve, if you'll permit me, I can remember it like it was yesterday. I mean,
all right.
So we're sitting there, and Charlie was just so kind, and he really was so, like, I was sitting with him during the show, and he was like, it's like, remember the first time you saw Buddy Rich play, and you were just like jumping up and down in your seat, and you were like, he was practically doing that. He was, Steve pulled out all the stops that night, and Charlie was like, he was just going like, this is unbelievable. Yeah. So anyway, we're in the backstage area, Steve's dressing room, and he was saying, it's so great to meet you or something, and Steve said, well, actually, we did meet once before. And Charlie said, really? And he said, well, I played in the band Journey, and we opened for you guys in 1981. And he tells the story. He said, and our singer said, we want to thank you for making Escape #1. And then we got booed off the stage. Charlie's face went like, I'm so sorry. Like, it was his fault. I'm so sorry. And he said, then he went, you were in Journey? and Steve says, yeah. And he said, this is the classic is, were you this good then?
That's right. I remember that.
And Steve,
that was it.
Steve goes, yeah, Steve's like, probably not.
No.
probably not.
Exactly.
Oh man, it was
that's the phrase. I do remember that now. Yeah, were you this good then?
Yeah.
That's hilarious. Oh my God.
But that opened the door to like a bunch of encounters, because then I was on tour with Vital Information. Later that year, we played Ronnie Scott's, and he just showed up and sat right in the front row. So we got to hang out there. And then right across the street from my house or my apartment in New York City is the Beacon Theater. And I was walking around, my wife and I were going to go get some lunch, and I saw these Rolling Stone road cases around the Beacon Theater. So I called Johnny and I said, hey, what's going on? I see all these Stones cases. There was nothing on the marquee. So you called Charlie's tech, who came to the side door and just let Diane and I in to the Beacon Theater. And there was about 3 people in the audience. They were rehearsing for Shine a Light. And it was Martin Scorsese was there, like with these cameras. So there was like a rehearsal and camera, setting up the cameras.
Yeah.
So, so that was pretty fun, get to hang with him a little there. And then he invited me to come to the show, which was a total trip to watch. Band sounded amazing that night. And then shortly after that, like a couple of years later, Johnny, you and I saw Charlie at the Iridium with his jazz group,
right?
The A, B, C, and D of Boogie Woogie.
Exactly. Yeah,
which was really a trip, to hear him play in that kind of setting. And in my mind, like how I heard Charlie in that kind of setting is something like Art Blakey playing jazz. And I mean, yeah, there's right with, and Keith Carlock.
Keith Carlock, yeah.
Yeah. Like he'd keep a really solid groove. Like for instance, like the tune Moanin' by Art, that Art Blakey recorded. He keeps just a really solid swing and groove through the whole tune. And it's not like bebop drumming. It's like, straightforward, almost like blues shuffle kind of drumming, but it's definitely jazz oriented. And that's how Charlie sounded to me playing with that group, which was really, a treat to experience that. And he had a beautiful vintage Gretsch kit that night. Yeah, and then the very last time that I saw him was actually his 74th birthday. And it was at the Dakota Jazz Club in Minneapolis. And I was playing there with Vital Information on June 3rd. And Tim Reese was playing there on June 2nd, which is Charlie's birthday.
Right.
And I had gotten there the night before. I gotten there on that night, June 2nd, and Tim Reese, the saxophone player, knew that I was there, and he called me and he said, yeah, right. Would you come down to the Dakota because it's Charlie's birthday? He has a band that plays jazz versions of Stones tunes, and he was playing at the Dakota Jazz Club. And he said, if you come down, I know Charlie will come down, and I want him to hang out. So I said, absolutely, I'll come down. So I came down, and Lowell Pickett, who runs the Dakota, put Charlie and I up in this booth, like he called it the Prince booth, so we could kind of be up in the balcony watching the group and then have some privacy. So we hung out. It was just a lot of fun to hang. And then we both sat in. So Tim called me down, and I played Take the Coltrane and straight ahead jazz. And then a few tunes after that, Charlie came and sat in and played Brushes. It sounded really great playing with Brushes. So it was, quite interesting experiences, like mainly in the jazz world. So he got to really, get into like talking about, like everyone was saying, like Chad was saying, like talking about the jazz stuff. We really got deep into talking about all the great jazz drummers and great jazz musicians. So had some fun exchanges.
Yeah. Steve, I remember going to the Dakota with Charlie that night and watching you play, and being next to him, and him just like, look at what he's doing. Look at that. Oh, he didn't do that before. Oh, look at his right hand. Oh, check out that ride cymbal. He was enamored with your playing. He really liked
it. That's a trip. Yeah, it was a treat. It was a super treat.
Yeah.
If you guys,
I just love the. Were you that good back then?
Yeah, I know, right? And Steve's like, probably not.
No.
Yeah.
That's so classic.
Are you that good then? I just got to tell a quick. I may have told some of you guys this. It's a story it's maybe my greatest memory or time that I spent with Charlie. This was 2008. It was in the springtime, March or around that time. I was in London. We used to do these get-togethers with artists, and so I'd go there for 4 or 5 days ahead of the Frankfurt show. And in this particular occasion, it was the day after we had done this big artist gathering, and I'd invited Charlie, as I did every year, and he seemed very close to coming this time, and in the end he didn't come, but he invited me to lunch the next day, which was a Friday, with him and Sherry Daly, who Don knows, and some of you guys probably know Sherry. Charlie used to work for the Stones and was Charlie's assistant. So I go down and I meet them at this really nice restaurant in Chelsea, near where Charlie's flat is. And we have this fantastic lunch. It's a beautiful spring day. It's on the warm side. So we finished lunch, and it's about 2 in the afternoon or something. And Charlie said, what do you have to do now? Do you have anywhere to go? And I said, no, I'm going to just walk back to my hotel. I'm staying up on Regent Street. And he said, well, I have some errands to run up at Piccadilly. Do you want to come along? I said, sure. Yeah, it was a beautiful day to walk. So we actually went to his flat for a minute to pick something up. Then we walked along Hyde Park, and it was, and the point of getting at is we talked about, he just almost the entire time talked about jazz drummers, his heroes. I remember him talking about seeing Gene Krupa as a young kid and the influence that had on him, and the effect it had. And he said, Gene Krupa in those days, he was a matinee idol. He said he had this black hair like you, he said, and the women went crazy for him. It was just like, and he was so animated and so excited talking about it. So we're having this amazing day. Honest to God, we're walking along Hyde Park, and this guy's walking toward us, and he looks at us and he goes, it's you. And Charlie was so great. He went, hi, how are you? And he shook his hand, and it was like, it was such a he acknowledged the guy without engaging too long. And I'm sure you guys know how that goes. You certainly don't want to just snub the guy, but he acknowledged him, said hello, and then we just kept walking. And then Charlie said, I thought he was talking to you or something. And I went, no, he was talking to you. Yeah, he recognized you. So we're walking along, we're having this great conversation, and I'll try to keep this story short because it has a tendency to go long. But we first go to his shirt shop where he has his shirts made. And we go in there, and he introduces me to the man who makes his shirts as a very important man in the music business. And this was unbelievable. I'm sitting there like thinking, no, I'm not. I'm just a schmuck. You guys all know me. I'm not important. And he said, drummers like Roy Haynes and Elvin Jones, if they need something, they call him. And the guy's like, oh, wow, that's cool. So we leave the shirt shop. We go to his shoemaker, who's also in the arcade there, and if you know
German Street.
Yeah.
Yes, exactly. And we went to the two arcades are like opposite each other. There's there's one that has a great vintage Rolex shop in it. Anyway, we go from one to the next to his shoe shop, and he tries on some shoes that were made for him, and he took in a box with him. And he introduces me again to the man there as a very important man in the music business. And the guy couldn't have been nicer. And I'm wearing like my store-bought Cole Haan shoes. And he says, well, if ever I can be of service to you. And I'm thinking, thank you, humbly, like, in my Cole Haan shoes. So anyway, it's getting to be about 4:00 in the afternoon, and he said, where do you have to go now? Do you have to be anywhere? And I said, no. I said, my hotel's just around the corner there on Regent Street. And he said, how about a coffee? And we had walked by the Woolsey restaurant there on Piccadilly. And he had said, as we walked by it, that they were going to be having his daughter's 40th birthday party there, like in a couple of weeks. And his daughter, would turn 40 in 2008. So anyway, so we're done doing the errands. And he said, let's have a coffee. So we look up, and there's a Starbucks, like, I don't know, a couple 100 feet away. We both went, yeah, we don't want to go to Starbucks. And he said, how about tea at the Wolseley? And I said, great idea. So we walked down a couple of blocks to the Wolseley. And as I say, it's about 4:00 in the afternoon. And I didn't even think anything of it. I just figured it'd be empty. We go in there, and it's just rocking. There's people at the bar drinking martinis. It's, tons of people in there. We go up to the hostess, and Charlie says, 2 for tea. And this young girl, probably in her early 20s, says, it's going to be about a 30-minute wait. And we kind of both went, we're not going to wait 30 minutes. So we start to leave. We turn around to leave. And I'm thinking, well, that's the end of that. This man comes out of nowhere, grabs both of us by our shoulders and said, right this way, sir. Takes us inside. And that scene from Goodfellas, if you remember the movie where Ray Liotta can't get a table, and all of a sudden this table comes out of nowhere in the club, like they just go right this way, so it's the same thing. It's like this table magically appears, and Charlie turns to me and says, they must know who you are.
You're very important. person in the music business.
Yeah, very
John.
important.
Exactly, John.
Chad, exactly.
That's
Oh man,
great.
It was the capper of the day. And so anyway, we sit down and Elton John, his manager, comes over and says hello to Charlie. And it was just this unbelievable dream like surreal day. And we finally we finished our tea and we went our separate ways or whatever. And
Who paid
I got
for
back
tea?
to the
Who paid?
he paid for tea. He insisted on paying for tea. I'd bought lunch, and he
Very good.
wouldn't hear of it. Yeah, he wouldn't hear of it. Me,
Of course not. Yeah.
He said, "You got," I said, "Well, Charlie, it's like it's a company card." He's like, "No, I'll please, I'll get this." But,
He has a company card too. Yeah.
yeah, he was so generous like that. But I got back to the hotel. My wife was with me on the trip, and and she's like, how was lunch with Charlie? I'm like, sit down. You're not going to believe this. Yeah. And it was like, I told her the whole thing. It was, just an incredible day. And that was, trust me, that was the short version of this, of the story. Because
That's really nice.
Good story, Johnny. Good one.
Right.
That's really
Yeah,
nice, John.
yeah. Sean, I think you had a story you wanted to tell.
Well, I had this amazing night where Charlie showed up on a gig. It was Chuck Leval's. Chuck Leval made this big band record. And so they were in between like some dates. And so we had this gig here in New York. And it's like, man, Charlie's going to come down. Charlie's going to come down. I'm like, but that is crazy, And he showed up, and I'm trying to remember, Don, were you there that night?
I was, yeah.
Yeah, right.
He had been hopping around to some gigs. Bernard had a gig, and I can't remember the guy's name. His other fantastic drummer, and he was all about that. But he showed up, and he's like, side stage. He's like, "Are you gonna play? Because if you're gonna play, I'll jump up and help out." And he's like, "No, I don't know. Well, maybe, but no, maybe not. Well, yeah, maybe." He could, but it was great. And I'm looking for a picture of that night, actually.
Yeah, I had a couple. Well, just because it kind of reinforces what you guys were saying about how joyful he is.
Yeah,
like
there it is.
There's this photo of him, and he's like sitting down, just checking out the drum.
Oh, great!
But there's this huge smile on his face, and it's just like this childlike enthusiasm of like, drums. Fuck, it's fun. And like incredibly gracious, just like super nice and a gentleman. And I just remember at the end, I got to sort of hug him, and I just said in his ears, I said, "Man, please know in your heart what an inspiration you've been to the drumming world and all of us." I mean, and it was just so great. It was really magical. And he sat in and played a tune, and I remember it's sort of what Kenny was saying at the beginning, like he'll do something like I have a little clip of him, I was trying to capture some of him playing, and man, just the way he hit a damn cymbal, it had this conviction to it. And, it wasn't super hard, but there was such intent behind it. And I remember the snare drum. I remember you guys talked about maybe if the snare drum, if he should tilt it, and then he decided not to, and he just played, and
he was like, "Don't bother. Why bother?" It's like, he would say that a lot. Like, why bother? It's like, what do you mean, why bother? It's Charlie.
But
Watts.
man, it was
he didn't want to mess with you. He didn't want to mess with what you've already established, because he's like, you've already dialed it in. I don't want to mess up his situation. Very humble,
Very humble and giving. But his joy for music,
yes,
just off the charts. That child, and Keith has that too. Keith Richards. Yeah. I had this lucky thing once. I got to play with Keith and do a track, and it
Peter
was
Wolf, right?
Yeah, Peter Wolf. Were you at that too?
I wasn't in that, no, but I know it well.
Oh yeah, wow. Yeah. Well, anyway, but both of them had this parallel childlike love about music, man. It's so inspiring when you're around people that have been in the business so long, that like RJ did, or Dark, or this is such a hard business to age gracefully. You know what I mean? And man, being around those kind of spirits.
Unless you're Clem Burke.
Perfect hair. Look at his hair. Perfect.
Yeah.
No, sorry, Sean.
No, but everything you guys have been saying about how magic he was as a spirit and kind, and this childlike joyfulness about playing music still. And anyway, I'll never forget it. It was amazing.
Fantastic.
I just, one of the other things, I just loved how he carried himself. I mean, we've all analyzed the playing and the music so much, which was just great, but just how he carried himself.
Yeah.
Just that, not just the antithesis of kind of
Yeah.
which is prevalent in
Yeah.
I mean, everyone's different, but no, he's just really cool. I met him before I met him that time with Steve and John at the Regatta Bar when I went to see Steve's band. I was doing a session for Glyn Johns, must have been mid-70s, and he rolled up because he knew he was very tight with Glyn, and he rolled up with half a crate of vodka for the band. Hey guys, I thought you might like a little refreshment. And at the time it was before I went with Yamaha, and I was playing a Gretsch kit. It was a round badge Gretsch kit. So immediately, that happened. Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway,
sure. Yeah.
I remember
that night at Steve's gig that you guys were chatting and talking about having met before and all your mutual friends and that's why that picture of the three of you, I think he asked to have a picture with you and Steve, like the three of you guys. Like, really? I don't want the rest of you punters in this. I just want
Yeah.
how about me and the two real drummers,
Yeah, nice.
There's also a picture of Charlie and I from that night with my mom and dad.
All right.
Oh, they were there, Steve?
Because my parents were there that night.
Right.
I'm from Boston originally, or that area, the Boston area, and so my parents were there, and Charlie and my mom and dad started talking a lot, and they ended up talking for a long time. So each and every time that I'd see Charlie after that, his first question was, "So how's your mom and dad?"
I know.
He would always ask me about.
That's really nice. Yeah.
That's
cool.
Pretty cool.
Hey, Don, speaking of like all the drum kits and stuff, I mean, he must have like, because he was sort of a collector, right? So he must have like just tons of stuff.
Collected a few things. Yeah.
Yeah. So is all that sort of in storage, and then will it maybe be like?
Is Maxwell going to do that photo book?
Well, there's talk of a lot of things, and his collection is grown exponentially over the years. And Steve has found him some amazing stuff. Don Bennett has found him some amazing stuff. I've found him a ton of stuff over the past 10 years or so. And the idea eventually, I mean, it's a private family situation. It's a private family situation they want to deal with eventually. And there's been a lot of talk about doing a photo book. I've taken a lot of photos of this stuff and gotten underway with an exhibition. I handled all the exhibition items for the Stones and restored or preserved all of his items. So everything's sort of slowly accumulating. He was never in a rush to get any of this together. So eventually, eventually it'll come to fruition. We'll do something really cool. And there's a lot of pieces. I mean, Steve has found a million things. I was lucky enough to find him, talk with DJ Fontana and get DJ's kit.
Wow.
I wanted to go to the right place. And Gene Krupa's last items from his widow and George Wetling's items, Dave, Fletcher Henderson's items, Baby Dodd's. I mean, a lot of stuff. Maxwell has found him a ton of great stuff as well, and all these. But beyond that, like some of his favorite items were like the original acetates of Billie Holiday, or Percussion King, the Krupa Percussion King stuff, or the horn for the Cotton Club. Unbelievable. So he's had me. Yeah. It's his contribution to the jazz world.
Yeah.
But also some rock and roll. I mean, there's a lot of stuff. But beyond drums, Benny Goodman's watches to Krupa.
Really?
Or a gift from Keith, which is Duke Ellington's diamond encrusted watch. Or, this signature. I mean, there's thousands of signatures. There's a lot of stuff.
Well, sounds like a museum in the making.
Well,
sure
that's the idea. That is the idea.
Great.
It'll eventually, put everybody together that can help, and we'll make it happen. But there's no rush.
Yeah. Mickey, were you going to say something, Mickey?
Yeah, the kit that I saw him play the couple of times we were opening for them was an old Gretsch kit. Did he use the same kit all the time live?
Well, the blonde Gretsch?
The maple kit.
Now you were with T-Bone Walk, weren't you, during that?
Yes.
God rest his soul. I knew Bone very well and
Oh, great.
recorded with him and through the NRBQ guys, you know, with
Of course.
Tommy
Yeah.
Artolino and Joey Spock.
Yeah.
We would do, Luke just mentioned the only other guy that actually can play parts like that was Tommy Artolino.
That's true. That's very true.
Swing.
I'm glad you.
What a
I'm glad
great
you.
drummer, man.
Swing.
I'm glad
You
you.
know
brought
that,
him
you know
up.
that, John.
Yeah.
We were in a session together.
Glad you brought his name up.
Yeah.
Dave, we went to a session that you were doing over at Andy's in Cambridge. And I brought Tommy in and with T-Bone. But anyways,
Yeah.
that blonde kit, he's had that since '78.
Right.
And you know, you'd only use that kit for a lot of stuff.
What year, what vintage is that kit? Is it a sort of mishmash of things, or was it?
Potentially. It was definitely a wrap kit.
Yeah.
And, I was lucky, he asked me to restore it because all the bottom rims of
Yeah,
all the
right.
drums, the front rims, they take them all off and they get chewed up.
Yeah.
Things were just mismatched, you know, so I had to sorry, but I recut the edges
Well, yeah.
on the resonator sides anyway,
Oh, is that right?
because he just needed it, you know, but
Yeah.
he got them back and he's like, there's my drums.
Oh, nice.
Sing again. There's no gates, there's no muting, there's no
Yeah.
nothing. So he was using that kit for sure.
Yeah.
'78.
Yeah.
When you played with him, he was definitely using it.
Great.
Before that, it
Did
was on the
did
direct kit.
Don, did Richard King help him put together a repro for when they did those little sets in the middle of the stadium?
He found him a bass drum.
Right.
Yeah. And then there was the B kit, the B stage kit, which was
That's what I meant.
Right.
yeah.
That's the
Yeah,
one.
yeah.
Yeah.
yeah, it was kind of. I guess supposedly I wasn't around during then, but they didn't have much time to get it together. And whoever restored it, I forget his name, but just put on it. You know, it wasn't a nitrocellulose lacquer finish. It was close enough, but they had like 3 days to get it together. So.
But you know, it was Charlie,
Very-
so it could have been a cardboard box. It would have sounded
Yeah,
like,
yeah,
Exactly.
well, yeah,
Exactly.
street fighting, man. I mean, this is-
yeah. There you go.
yeah, yeah.
Well, Clem,
Yeah,
I
it's
was going to
incredible.
ask you. I was going to just ask you, and I know you guys. I so appreciate your time in doing this and spending so much time doing this. But that picture of you, Clem, that you showed me with you and Michael Shreve, and Don and I were talking about that too. I was just curious if you had anything you wanted to share about that time with him, because I think of you as being like a link to Earl Palmer and all those guys that Charlie loves so much, and you know, knowing Hal the way you knew him. And did you talk about stuff like that? About
Sure. First of all, I'd like to thank Don McAulay for putting that together that day in Seattle in 2019, when I got to spend some time with Charlie, as you can see in the photo there. And yeah, we kind of commiserated about Earl Palmer quite a bit. In fact, you know, Earl used to do a gig across from NBC in Burbank at this place called Chadney's every Tuesday for quite some time. And most Tuesdays, if I was around, I would go see Earl play. He would play the first set, and then he would kind of become the MC of the night and orchestrate different musicians getting up. I've seen, you know, Erskine play there, Carol Kay, you know, people would just get up and play, and Earl would be like a brilliant host. So one night I'm sitting there, and all of a sudden, I glance over, and Jim Keltner and Charlie walk in. Not only did they just kind of, in this very intimate setting, but as we all know, if you really want to see what a drummer's doing, you have to kind of watch it from the side or from like overhead, right? Looking straight on, there's not that much to see. So I'm looking at Earl. Next thing I know, next to Earl, like they pull up some chairs, Charlie, Jim sitting sideways like that, watching Earl play the whole time.
No pressure.
So I had this
No
vision.
pressure.
It was awesome. And, when I actually got introduced to Charlie through Don, we talked about that, and Charlie was like, "Oh, you were there that night? I remember that," and as everyone was saying, how gracious and friendly Charlie was, and really, he invited me into the dressing room, and it was he and I for a while at first. And then Mike came in, and funny enough, I had been at RPM Studios in New York City when they were doing the Dirty Work album, and coincidentally, Mike was there as well that night, so we kind of talked about that. But then, interestingly enough, when Don Bennett showed up, and he had some like bass drum heads, like vintage bass drum heads that he was going to give to Charlie. So afterwards, the PA came in and said, Charlie, it's time for the meet and greet. So Charlie says to me, well, you stay right there. I'll be right back. And then the PA goes, no, Charlie, they're all coming this way. He has to go, right? So of course, I run right into Keith, and I'm like, hi, Keith. He didn't want to know anything. But Bennett, funny enough, said to me, oh, because you know Charlie really well, right? I go, no. I never met him before. Why do you say that? He said, well, the way you two were getting on, it seemed like you were old friends. So it was like, that really touched me when he said that.
Of course.
Yeah.
Nice.
That's great, Clem.
So
That's beautiful.
It was great. It was a great day. And I can't thank Don enough for putting that together. Of course, with Charlie passing, a lot of memories of that.
Yeah.
So,
I remember very well that he was introducing you as the drummer from Blondie. And he's like, oh, that's like that 4/4 thing with that blonde girl, right? I'm like, yeah, that is. He definitely has that,
Yeah.
He's got that 4/4 push thing, I was like, yeah, that's him.
That's what it is. Yeah.
Great fucking hair too. Like, you put you and Ronnie together, man. Like two of you were like you guys went off on each other because
yeah.
I was like, Ronnie, check out. You were like, you guys were like,
Yeah.
look at each other.
When we had that song Heart of Glass, it was kind of like all these rock bands went disco, so to speak, and it was Miss You was out kind of right there, and also Carmine with Do You Think I'm Sexy? So those three songs together, and think about we all sold out at the same time to the.
Oh, buddy.
No, man,
you kicked the shit out of that, Clem. Come on, man.
How many rock and roll bands could do disco, and you guys
come on.
Hugely
Nobody better at that.
Important.
It was brilliant, and I'll never forget it. It's great.
That's great. That was
and, I think it's safe to say, Don, and correct me if I'm wrong, but once you kind of pass that Charlie test, 2 years later, right now, if Charlie were with us, you'd be in his circle. You know what I mean? You'd be at that gig, and he'd be saying to Don, he's Clem coming tonight. It's really great about that.
It's quite amazing.
I'll just say a quick funny. The last time I saw him 2 years ago in Gillette Stadium, I was on the Vineyard. It was in the summertime, and Don and I had been in touch about it, and I said, "Man, I can't get a ferry off the freaking Vineyard. Worst case is I'm going to just go off on foot, take a car service to the stadium, but it just would have been a real hassle. I wanted to have my own car to sort of get around. So anyway, I finally I was able to get a ferry to get off the island. And
it's hard to get on that ferry if you don't book ahead of time.
If you don't book ahead of time, especially in the summertime, it's madness. So
with a car.
I got it all squared away. And Don, I remember you sent me a text. I said something like, we have some friends staying during that time, but I'm just going to bug out for the day. And you said, it's good that you know your priorities or something like that. It's good that you have your priorities. So anyway, I got a pass from the wife anyway. And I long story short is I get to the venue. It was a hellacious day of travel and the traffic of getting into the stadium. And I finally get there, and I get to the designated spot to meet Don. And Don McAulay, by the way, the guy is just a prince, and he's juggling 1,000 things. Clem, you know what I'm talking about. He had a bunch of my ex-coworkers from Zildjian there that night. I think there were 10 or 15 people with their kids and their wives and their, and I'm just by myself, and I'm just kind of standing off to the side. And he said to me, he knows you're here. Just got to deal with some things. I got to do this, but I'm going to get you back there. So anyway, you brought me in, and I got to spend some time with them. And then all the Zildjian folks came in and had their meet and greet. So it's getting close to showtime, similar to what you were saying, Clem. And I'm saying goodbye to Charlie. And as I'm walking out, him following the group, and he said, "Where are you going?" And I said, "Well, it's almost time." He's like, "Well, I've got more time unless you've got to be somewhere. If you've got to," and I'm like, "Well, I don't have to be anywhere." Well, then you can stay if you want. You don't have to. It was like an old married couple, you don't have to, you can stay, but you don't have to. I'm like, well, of course I'm going to stay. Are you kidding me? So
nobody's going to pressure him into slowing, altering his day. I mean, there's time schedules you got to work with, but
exactly.
Whatever.
I think it was literally, his PA coming in, or maybe it was you, Don, that said 15 minutes, we got to start walking toward the stage. So had to go. But it was the last time I saw him in person, and it was a wonderful memory to just. And thank you, Don, as always, for accommodating the way you did so well, and do so well.
No,
There's a lot for you, John. Well done, man.
Yeah.
Hey, Don, did
enjoy your time
listening to that? Did different people have different rituals? Did he have any like pre-show rituals at all, or was he just just show up?
Oh yeah,
yeah, Don. Yeah, he always had his practice pad and his sticks on his table, and his and
he had a million. He had we'd buy him a little record player and buy him a CD player and all these things and a bunch of cool jazz CDs. Here, check out this new Prez Hall thing. Or check this out. And he'd be like, yeah, great. All right, cool. It would always be Benny Goodman, or it'd always be the same. It'd be the same tunes, and he would listen to that and just we'd have candles for him, and it was the Cotton Club. He's in the Cotton Club, and very small circle of people that know John. You know what I'm talking about. That we come in, Clem, you do, all you guys really, but it was his little ritual is to not think about rock and roll, not to think about what he's got to do. He's thinking about what would these jazz greats do. And that was his warm-up, was listening to jazz. But then, he would also do this little thing. He'd get up behind Pierre's workbox, which is the center of the universe behind the drum kit, which is this massive road case. Pierre has introduced me to this whole world and brought me into this whole world. Where everybody would go to and conjure, and before they go out on stage. And he would just sit there and wiggle. He'd start doing his little, Cotton Club dance, like the Cotton Club dancers did. And that was his thing, is loosen up the hip flexors and get comfortable and loose and not think about what he had to do. And my job is to make sure that he has his best show, no matter what. And think about all the problems that are going on, or if there's issues. But he'd be like, that was his ritual. That's what he would do.
So he didn't have a kit or a practice kit backstage or anything like that. He had like a little pad smaller than this. Like when I went to the
older version of that. Yeah.
Well, it was like that big at the Beacon when they did the sound check at the Beacon, and he put it on top of a road case and just played single strokes or double strokes or something. But nothing backstage, no little kit or anything like that.
No, there was always a kit backstage for if they were to rehearse backstage.
All right.
But there's a kit up on stage, and if it was a hot day or it was raining, we'd go backstage. I'd always set it up. He'd go back once in a while, and that was
you can see it in this picture.
Oh yeah, that's the
little practice pad. Yeah. But the kit, we brought out a few different kits. But the last one that he brought out, we brought out the last two tours, was a kit that John Ferraro had purchased for him through Chooch McGee. And oddly enough, it's the first one in the catalog. Cataloging his stuff. It's this beautiful white marine pearl little Gretsch, 12, 14, 20. And he'd always have it back there. Seldom play it. But it was also the hang, their pre-ritual too, is to hang together as a band, because that was as powerful as what they're about to do. Playing is comes natural.
Yeah.
It totally just come natural to him. He'd keep loose, the dexterity. He'd keep very loose with his hands, with a practice pad. But it was the hang of those guys all going from room to room and hanging out to each other. That's
pretty cool to hear.
There's a lot to say about the unity of their mates.
That's amazing. Just like the Everly Brothers, right? The Everly Brothers. Just hang.
Oh yeah.
Just hang.
It's like the Police.
Aerosmith.
Yeah, man.
Or the Kinks. Hey, on that note, you guys, I actually have to go to sound check. Seriously.
Oh, good luck.
All right.
Yeah, thank you.
I'll spare you my last story then, Kenny. But thank you so much, Kenny, for doing this.
Good to see everybody.
Nice to see you, Kenny.
Great seeing everybody, man.
Bye.
Take care. See you.
Good to see you,
Love you, Kenny.
See you.
See you, buddy. Thank you. I'll just tell one more quick story to Don's point. That picture I just showed with Charlie's practice pad and sticks, that was at Gillette Stadium 5 years ago. A private show they did that Don was gracious enough to accommodate. And
those are old news now. We do a bunch of those per crop.
Yeah, that's it's no big deal now. It was October of 2016, just before the election. We were talking about the election and all that nonsense. But but anyway, during the course of the time in his dressing room, he said, I've got to talk to Ronnie about something. Come with me to Ronnie's dressing room. And I went into Ronnie's dressing room, and Ronnie had just, his twins had just been born. They were newborns, and they're in there with him. And he's sketched out the set list for the night on a big, like, whiteboard. And he's playing some music, and he's, Ronnie's sort of like dancing around in the room and really happy and skippy. And then Keith comes in, but Charlie reintroduces me to Ronnie. And this was a real magic moment for me anyway, because we had just been talking about drums and gear and all that stuff. And Ronnie said, oh yeah, the Zildjian guy. And I had been gone at that point for like 3 years from Zildjian. And Charlie said, not anymore. He quit. Now he plays them.
Yeah.
And it was like, it was so heavy. You guys, I think you can appreciate that. He acknowledged me as a drummer, which, I mean, what could be better than that, right?
That's great.
Exactly.
Yeah, it was, I drove home that night going, holy shit, like, wow. It was a really great moment.
Nice.
Anyway, I so appreciate all you guys taking time to do this today. This has been so much fun.
Thank you, John. Thank you for the invite.
Yeah, it was really great. Thanks.
Thank you for putting it together, Johnny. Yeah.
Oh,
Just
pleasure,
one thing.
Steve.
One thing I want to say is we haven't talked about is what Steve Jordan is doing right now. And Steve Jordan is, I'm out here with him right now on tour, and he's killing it.
Yeah.
He's playing great. It's been a real roller coaster for him, to go through this. And as everybody, I mean, we got to know that he was going to pass shortly before he did. So that some of us were conditioned, but we're out on the road, we're in rehearsal. And Steve had to switch from being the fill-in guy to being like, they might not let you go.
Yeah.
And the realization of that, and the realization of now you have to really, really honor, and that was a big thing, just honor the part. And I just got to say, shout out to Steve Jordan, who's just a fantastic guy, fantastic drummer, finding his way in this thing that none of us, there's a few people that could do it. And he's definitely on the top,
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
He's the right guy. He's the right guy for the job.
He's the right guy. Yeah.
His attitude towards it is great. It's great.
On the last one I did a couple of days ago, everybody said the same thing. Steve Gadd and Rick Murata and Andy Newmark, all who know Steve very well for a long time, said the same thing, that, they got the right guy. He's honoring it. He'll do it right. And I didn't want to put you in a weird spot by mentioning that, Don. So I'm so glad you.
No, that's all good.
Yeah.
Put on the table. He's finding, they're finding, Keith is just loving it, and everybody's loving it, and Steve is loving it. But we all realize, and Steve definitely realizes, there's things that he'll never be able to accomplish.
Yeah.
It's going to take a lifetime, but he's hitting it, and he's doing it. And despite anybody's judgments or whatever, that doesn't matter, because Charlie wanted him on that seat.
Right.
And I was fortunate to talk to him just a handful of, maybe a week before he passed. He called me and he told me about it, and he was all right. He's okay with this.
Yeah.
That's huge.
All right.
Yeah. That is huge.
Thanks for sharing that.
That is.
Yeah. Thank you, Don. Thank you. Well, gentlemen, it's been a great honor having you here today. Thank you so much.
Our pleasure.
I'm going to probably be reaching out to some of you guys to do one of these with me as a standalone too. So you might want to change your email addresses and or phone numbers when we're done.
John, let me just.
You're not dying, are you?
Oh my God. Oh man.
No, I'm just trying to find. Chad, you asked me when I saw you at.
I'm gonna ask you to do something for me. I mean, what the fuck?
When I saw you at Hal Blaine's birthday party, you said to me, "What are you doing? What are you doing with yourself?
Yeah.
What do you?" And I said,
dying, are you?
"I said I got grandkids and I play in."
Wasn't that great that we got to see Hal Blaine play the drums at 90 years old?
Oh, that was so great. That was
unbelievable.
What a blessing that was to be in that room.
I was like, oh my God.
Yeah.
It was a cool night.
After that, literally like maybe
that's right.
month.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I know. Dave Mattacks, what were you going to say? You were going to.
Oh, just on a slightly nerdy thing, I'd love to hear your stories. I think a lot of people would, about the time when Charlie came to the factory and that whole thing about picking the cymbals out and the whole 9 yards for that.
Ooh.
Yeah.
I could give you a thumbnail right now, a quick overview. That day that he came was like, I don't know, 10 years in the making of trying to get him to come. And it was literally, so it was the week that we had seen Steve. I'd been to the rehearsal on Monday, saw Steve on Tuesday. Their first show of the tour was Wednesday at Gillette Stadium. And as he's literally walking on stage, he turned to me and said, "I'd like to come to the factory tomorrow. Is that possible?" And I said, "Yes, of course, you know." And he said,
"No, sorry, we're booked up."
Yeah, exactly. Sorry, Dave Mattacks is coming
Dave
in.
Mattacks is coming. Sorry, we got a busy day.
Yeah, well,
Too many Englishmen. Too many Englishmen in one place.
He said, "If I come for like an hour, is that enough time to see it?" And I said, "Sure." I said, "We could make that work. If that's all, you could stay as long as you like, but if you only have an hour, we'll make that work." And he said, "Fine, then we'll see you at noon tomorrow." And he said, "I'll ring you in the morning." Yeah. And he showed up at noon on the dot. I said, "Can we send a car?" He said, "No, I've got a driver. I'll get there on my own." So he showed up at noon and he stayed until 5 p.m. And he would have stayed longer. I mean, we certainly didn't kick him out. He was just finally like, "I guess we should get going now." But in the course of the day, he really was more interested in looking at the photos. All those, you guys that have been there, you know, all the photos along the wall. And at that time, he had started collecting some of these drum sets that belonged to Louis Bellson and you know, Dave Tuff or whoever, Ray Baduck and all these jazz legends. And he was wanting copies of the photos on the wall of these guys behind their drums because he had the actual drum set. And he was talking about doing a coffee table book, having all these pictures in there. So this would help sort of complete the picture. We were talking about this the other day with Steve Maxwell on the other one. So he was explaining it all, and he was looking. He was actually describing in some of these pictures this, like, when this was taken, and that was when they did this, and he was playing. You know, yeah, it was amazing. He like
really knew.
Yeah, really an encyclopedia of all that. So. And of course, you know, I was gently saying, "Well, Charlie, if you want to maybe pick out a couple of cymbals or try a few things," and he really wasn't that interested, but he did. He came down to the room and we were having him try some flat rods and he was really, rest his soul, he was just really being polite. He's like, "Well, that one's not bad. I guess I'd try that one. Can you send it to me?" And I said, "Sure, I'll send it to you." Like, he didn't really want to have to. He wasn't going to put it up on the next Stones gig on the gig, you know, and try it. He was like, "I'll, you know, if you send it to me, I'll try it." But as at the end of the day, and this is the really short story, but at the end of the day, we're in my office and we're just sort of saying goodbye. And let me just see if I can. Yeah. So it was just such a wonderful day. And I had this cymbal that I'd had sitting in my office. It was an old 60s 16-inch A thin crash. Really, it sounds like the Bomb, Don, you know, that old Peisty that he had that's like on Brown Sugar and Gimme Shelter, you know, that really bright, fast crash. So I had that sitting there in my office. And I said, "Charlie, I have something for you. I've been wanting to give this to you." And he put it on his finger and he just hit it with his finger and he went, "Oh, that's lovely." And I said, "You know, I hope you like it." And he said, he had this like, "I can have it? Like, really?" And I said, "Yes, please, I would be so honored if you had this." And that he took with him. You know what I mean? I said, "I'll put it with the other stuff I'm going to send." He said, No, I'll take this with me," which led me to, and Don has told me that it's in the warehouse. It's with all the.
Oh yeah, yeah, it definitely is. Yeah. It's got a nice little sticky note on there saying, you know, the Zildjian symbol, you know, that day and everything, the date. Yeah.
Wow. And I told him, and it wasn't, and I wasn't exaggerating, but you know, Armin Zildjian was still alive at that time. Unfortunately, he wasn't there that day, but Armin used to come in and he'd say to me, "You still have that cymbal?" And I'd say, "Yeah, here it is." And he'd listen to it. He loved old A's, Armin. I mean, they were really near and dear to him. You know, I mean, that's what Zildjian made back then, were the A's, not the K's, you know. And I remember him saying, like, "That's hold on to that one, hold on." So I know when I told him that I gave it to Charlie, he was very happy. You know, I should say he was gone, but I told him I was holding it for Charlie. He was very happy that someone who could really appreciate it would get it, you know, and not just into the ether. So,
John, the last, just to add on to that, the last interview that he did, we set up an interview in New Jersey with Rob Shanahan, and it was for Vic Firth Zildjian, you know, but it was actually, well, it was a lot of things, but the Zildjian thing. And he mentioned you in that. It was pretty cool. Just talking about Zildjians, and here's a Zildjian, here's another Zildjian, here's an Avitas, here's an Avitas, you know.
Yeah. Well,
and he said, John DeChristopher gave me this beautiful symbol. You know, so yeah.
That's great.
Years after you had left. Yeah, years after you left.
yeah.
You're a very important man in the music industry.
Yeah, big time.
Yeah, you're not dying, are you?
Miami, John.
Not yet, you guys. Not yet. Not hardly.
Yeah.
Something you want to talk
Very
about?
funny.
Oh man. I
Excellent.
love you guys. I love you all madly. Support Dave Mattacks.
Love you too, Johnny. Thanks for having.
Oh,
Back at you.
For having us, boys.
thank you guys. This has been so much fun. Shawn Pelton, new show this weekend?
Yeah, we're still live. We got 2 more. We're doing 4 in a row. So 2 down, 2 more, and then a break.
All right.
Excellent.
Nice.
Fantastic. Have a great show. Yeah.
Thank you.
Nice to
Yeah.
see all you guys.
Nice to see you, Sean.
Yeah, good
Great
to
to
see
see all you
everyone.
guys.
Thank
All
you.
right.
Hey,
Take
bye-bye.
care.
See you guys soon.
Take care.
All right.
See you guys. Take care now. Take care.
See
Stay
you.
safe.
Cheers.
See you, boys.
Bye-bye.